that advocates for the ideas of limited government, individual freedom, and free enterprise, as well as traditional values, and a strong national defense. As a chapter, we aim to be a visible presence for the conservative movement on Virginia Tech's campus. On behalf of YAP and the CRs, I would like to take a moment to thank the Claire Booth Lewis Policy Institute as well as Young America's Foundation for helping us sponsor and fund this event. Without their support, tonight would not have been possible. My first time hearing Bae Buchanan was in 2012 at YAP's National Conservative Student Conference in Washington, D.C. Her boldness, intelligence, and lifetime of great accomplishment caught my attention. During my time as an intern at Claire Booth Lewis Policy Institute, I was fortunate to be able to hear Bae speak again on many issues and want to inspire and empower conservative college students just like myself. Bae started her distinguished political career as the treasurer of Ronald Reagan's presidential campaigns in 1980 and 1984. In 1981, she became the youngest treasurer of the United States at the age of 32, and in 2012, she was a senior political advisor for the Romney presidential campaign. In this role, she emerged as the top surrogate for the candidate on both national television and radio. In the spring of that same year, her second book, Bae and Her Boys, The Unexpected Lessons I Learned as a Single Mom, was published. Her first book, The Extreme Makeover of Hillary Rodham Clinton, was released in 2008. Presently, she is the president of the American Cause, an educational foundation dedicated to advancing traditional conservative issues. In addition, she regularly speaks on college campuses and at student conventions about leadership and conservative principles, and can often be seen on television doing the same. Bae served as the campaign chairman for all three of her brother Pat Buchanan's presidential campaigns, and she has anchored Equal Time, a political talk show. In addition, she has worked as a political analyst for Good Morning America and has hosted various radio talk show programs. The Claire Booth Lewis Policy Institute named Bae Buchanan the 2007 Woman of the Year, and again in 2011. She was named by the Institute as one of the 10 most influential conservative women in America. As a native of Washington, D.C., Buchanan has a master's degree in mathematics from McGill University and has further studies at several universities, including the University of New South Wales in Australia. In 1981, she received her honorary Doctor of Law from Stanford University. She lives in Virginia with her husband. As a daughter of an immigrant myself, who legally came to America from the Philippines, and through hard work and dedication achieved the American dream and gained citizenship, I am so thankful that one of my role models in the conservative movement and in life is able to join us today at Virginia Tech to speak on immigration, an issue so near and dear to my heart. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Bae Buchanan.
I will use the mic if you think it's necessary. Can everybody hear me? As I get going.
Use the mic, please.
Use the mic? Very good.
We good. You guys probably go down. I can feel the tension already. Yeah, for real. The tension already.
All right, how's that? Is that a little better? Okay, the light. I am just thrilled to be here and just absolutely thrilled to have this enormous response to Lauren's invitation to speak today. I certainly appreciate all of you taking your time. One of the fun things that I do, and I have many different aspects to my career these days, and I spend a lot of time on college campuses. And I want to tell you why I so enjoy that. I believe that without question, we need stronger leaders in this country. We need real leaders. We need people who really have a sense of what it is they believe, not what teachers or family members or friends, but what they seriously, deeply believe. What defines them? What makes them who they are? What are they willing to stand up for, be bold, and take a position? And the only way you really learn that is to do open dialogue, to have discussions, to debate people with whom you disagree. How can you say you're pro-life if you're not willing to lay out the facts to someone who's pro-choice in a fair manner, one manner in which you show respect if they disagree, you have an open mind to their position, but at the same time, you want to explain to them why you disagree. You have that exchange, you learn things about the other side, and you start understanding that they're coming from a different place, and maybe some place you should consider, at least as you develop your own thoughts. I think one of the best things college students can do right now is prepare to be true leaders in this country. Real leaders. People who, when they do have an opportunity in their communities, not necessarily elected office, But if you become an elected officer, or if you become active in your community, that when the general public is moving in one direction and you think it's wrong, you're willing to stand up and to feel the pressure of having people criticize you and call you names and suggest that you are on the wrong track, that you're mean-spirited. Whatever it be they call you, and still know, hey, I have studied this issue. I know that this is a better direction. And I'm not going to let anybody intimidate me from taking a position that I feel so strongly about. That's called leadership. And without this kind of dialogue that we're going to have this evening, hopefully, a respectful debate, back and forth, then there's no way that you can really appreciate what it is you truly believe. I was on Wolf Blitzer one night, many, many times, but one in particular, and I was making a case for immigration. And he suggested people who take your position are considered racist. And people will call them racist. And I said to him, first of all, I wanted to say, who? Well, you? Who? The cameraman? Who? Why don't you tell everybody it's my opposition? It's the opposition to my position. It's very powerful just to say they're racist and try to quiet us. But my position with him was very simple. Please tell me, Wolf, what is racist about wanting my borders secured, the country's borders secured, and our laws enforced? Because that's my position. I think it's to the benefit of this nation to get control of our borders, to make certain we know who's coming into this country, who's staying in this country if they do have a legitimate visa for 6 months or a year. Where are they now? They should either re-up or go home, because this is what the law is. This is what it says. And I see today that we face, in every corner of this country, what we're facing is the consequences of a Washington gone amok, where laws are very clearly on the board, and they refuse to enforce them. Not in the last few years, not in the last 8 years, but in the last 20-some years. Back in 1986, Ronald Reagan was president. And the illegal immigration problem was percolating already. Prior to that, in this country, we've had waves of immigrants come into this country, and then we've closed our doors because we wanted those who have come to assimilate. We've had economic issues, or whatever it is, we've closed the doors. And then we've opened them back up again, and waves of immigrants came. And then we closed them again. That's been kind of our history. And yet, when we realized in 1980, even though we have, and still do, have the most generous immigration policy in the world, a 1.2, approximately, 1.3 million immigrants come to this country legally every single year. Nobody can compete with us. All right, so we have this number there that we feel is, for whatever reason, some people maybe think it should be higher, and others think it should be dramatically low, that we should be moving it up and down as our economy allows people to come in and jobs are available. And others think, no, it should be widened because there's so much need in the world. Well, those are legitimate debates. So back in 1986, Ronald Reagan, as a conservative, and other conservatives in Congress, did not for a minute want to give amnesty. But the left, the Democrats, led by the Democrats, they said, look, we have about 2 million people estimated, maybe 2.5 here, right now, that are here illegally. And it's just going to grow. We got to do something to stop it. And their feeling, as they assess things, was that the reason they're coming is for employment. And that there was really no enforcement. Up to that time, it wasn't illegal to work in this country if you weren't here legally. That was not a violation of any law because we didn't have that law. But things had turned around and they felt there was a need to have a law in the books that says you cannot hire somebody if they're not here in the country legally. And so they had a compromise in Congress. It might have been the last one, to be honest, but they came together a compromise. And they said, the conservatives said, okay, we'll grant amnesty to those here, but we want a law on the books that says you cannot hire people who are not here legally. And then they felt that would, enforcing that law would basically take away clearly the #1 reason that people were coming into this country illegally. And so what happened? It turned out to be a lot more people were here, supposedly coming across the border, quite a few. And we granted amnesty to everybody who fell under that particular legislation, and were able to grant amnesty. But we didn't enforce our law. We didn't ever enforce that law. And so what happened is it sent a message around the world, clearly, that said, look, if you go to America, it's just a matter of time before there's another amnesty. And so if you just get there, lay low, we can work. Nobody's enforcing any kind of work site problems. And so we'll just work there and lay low. And as the numbers grow, there'll be another amnesty. That's what we'll do. Well, the problem was, of course, we have an open border. Our border was not secure at all. Still not secure to this day. Not in any manner anybody's imagination can go to that border and suggest it's a secure border. And everything we've seen in the last 6 months proves it categorically. So we had this open border, and that's only part of the problem. Because about almost an equal number of people have legitimate visas coming into this country for lots of different reasons, and they overstay their visa. And that's the other reason, the other way that we end up with people here illegally. So there's two areas of concern that has happened. So as you see, they continue to come, and we have lax enforcement policies for the last 20 years. In some cases, almost none. And then they would start it, a little here, a little there, pop up, and people kept coming and coming and coming. It's not, they think the numbers actually dropped off. There was some people that thought we had at the height as many as 20 million people here illegally. Now most people believe it's between 12 and 15 in this country illegal. All right, so why does that matter? Well, one thing is we are allowing, just a couple, this last year, there was tens of thousands of criminal aliens that we had in our custody, tens of thousands, and they were released by Homeland Security. There's over 100,000 criminal aliens in this country, okay? Now, they should be all gathered up and sent home, I agree. And has there been efforts to do that? No question about it. However, there's a little problem. See, they go and they visit their folks or friends, and then they come back because the border is wide open. It is a ridiculous policy to be pouring money into an effort to collect people who are obviously nobody thinks should be here or given an amnesty, people who are criminals, and they should be sent back, and they just return. So clearly this is a serious problem. Crime. Is all of this illegal immigration affected crime? There was a story in the paper in Prince William in Virginia County. They put in some very tough anti-illegal immigration rules and regulations in the county. And so there was, they moved to other counties and over to Maryland. They moved to Fairfax and moved to Maryland. Those there illegally. And there was a big story that said crime dropped by a third. And I said, oh, that's amazing. So I called a friend of mine who's the mayor of a town that did the same thing a couple years earlier, and he's now a congressman. And I said to him, what happened up there in Pennsylvania when you passed these laws? Crime dropped by a third. So then I started digging through what's going on in Arizona after they passed these couple of crime dropped by a third. Well, I don't know, if I were elected mayor or a governor, and I knew I could cut crime down by a third, I would say that that is your obligation to the people that have elected you to that position. And that's what you do. You keep the people who you have, that you represent as safe as possible. And this is a fact. If you look in the federal prisons, the number of people who are illegal aliens in the prison system is dramatic. All right? So this is one issue that is seriously affecting the quality of life in America. The fact that our crime is as high as it is. The other is, which I think is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this failed policy of ours, and that is the poor. We are importing poverty. We are importing it by the millions. We are bringing people, allowing people to come here illegally, who are adding to the ranks of the uneducated, untrained, and are unskilled workers. Unemployment amongst Black Americans today is higher than it was 8 years ago when Obama took office. It was about 26, almost 26%. It's over 27% now. Wages for working men and women in this country are stagnant and have been for decades. Stagnant. Why? Why could this possibly be? Well, when you bring in more and more workers, it's simple economics, supply and demand. You increase the number of unskilled workers, you are going to impact those that are here legally and those who are Americans. You impact the neediest in America. You are putting up enormous competition for them to get kind of work that would allow them to be able to take care of themselves and their family. And that is a policy that makes no sense, to be importing enormous poverty that is impacting the neediest of Americans. It is wrong. You look at, I remember when I was in Texas, I was traveling the country talking about immigration a few years back. And when the amnesty, the big amnesty push by George Bush, who was president at the time, and you have to remember now, all of this amnesty back in those days, and not so much today, but back in the George Bush day, the amnesty had enormous popularity. The press was for it, the president was for it, leaders of both parties were for it, the money people, the corporations, Wall Street, you name it, they were all for it. And I thought, there's no way. We passed a tough bill in the House, but they were going to convene with the Senate bill, and amnesty would have passed. It was, I don't know how we could stop it, I'll be honest. I asked some friends, we were meeting on a regular basis, I had a team pulled together to try to stop amnesty from becoming law in the land. And I asked, as we met one night, I asked one of the experts on the House, the Senate, and I said, how many people can we rely on? How many votes there? They said 9. I said, 9? What's 9 going to do? I mean, we're going to kill this, okay? And so I just thought it was done. So I got on the road and started traveling, talking on radio, doing TV, doing town halls, everywhere I could. I was in Texas. And this man spoke, who I just consider one of the bravest people I ever met. He was not educated. He was certainly not skilled. And in fact, he stood up to ask a question, and it was clear he was challenged mentally. He was just, he was about 38, 40 years old, and he wasn't articulate. And he said that he was very proud that he was able to work and take care of himself. And he says, all my life, now I have an apartment and I work, I'm a hard worker, and I take care of myself until 6 months ago. And he said, I can't do a lot. I'm a contractor. I work in construction. And I'll do anything they tell me, and I'm strong. And so that's how I've been able to take care of myself. But now I go from site to site, and I'm told, why would we hire you? We can hire 2 illegals for the price of you. And this man is devastated. He said to me, I have never been on welfare or anything like that. I have taken care of myself, and now I can't. But why? Why? Because of a policy. Of course, he didn't say this, but I can simply add it. Because those in Washington didn't with guts. They don't have the backbone or the willingness to take on a tough issue and address it so that American workers are protected from illegal activity, basically. So, another case, I was in North Carolina that same trip, and this black man came up to me after I spoke, and he was a Vietnam vet. And he said, I was the president of the local Chamber of Commerce, Black Chamber of Commerce. I was the president. And we had all kinds of different businessmen in it was Charlotte. And he said, we had all kinds. We had painters and roofers and contractors, and, you know, you just name it, and we had it. Now, he says, these are people that work with their hands, because in the black community there, he said, a lot of people got to a bad start. They didn't get the education they should have. They dropped out of high school, whatever it was. And he said, and so we started businesses, and we take care of our own. He says, you know, I'll hire my daughter's boyfriend, get her started. We train them, and then they have an ability to do something, to take care of their families too. And then they go out and start their own businesses. It's a very vibrant Chamber of Commerce. None of them have worked. And he says, I'm going to tell you why. He says, it's not because, several of them came up to me and joined this discussion. And one of them says, look, I can't even bid. It's not that I'm trying to make a lot of money. He says, as a black American, I get a minority status, and so I get affirmative action. I get a little bit of an edge because we are a minority-owned company. He said, we have coming into our neighborhoods Hispanic Americans, and they hire illegals. And we can't, he says, it's not that I can bid and maybe come lower, and yet we can't come close. I can't even bid, because I wouldn't pay anybody that little money. I wouldn't pay them that little. So there's no way that we could stay in business. So we've lost our businesses because Washington won't do their job. And that's the kind of thing that just, you just realize, here are hardworking Americans taking care of their own, and that's whose rug has been pulled out from under them. Not those who've gone to Harvard and have big degrees and are all thinking how wonderful this policy is. It's Americans who need those jobs to make certain that they can get their kids back on track and give them some training, and that they can even do better than they have. That's the American dream that has been stolen from millions and millions of Americans because of this policy. So where are we today? Where are we today, and what should we do? Number one, we are in a position where the American people utterly and absolutely oppose to amnesty. That is, and I should finish that story. As I traveled around, all I could tell people was, amnesty is coming unless you do something about it. And as I said, all the powers that be, all the money people were on the other side. How did we stop it? Because people started making phone calls. So many calls went into the Senate that they got scared. Those Douglas wonders, they got scared, and they wouldn't vote on the bill because they didn't want their name attached to it. They were afraid, right? So that's what happens when you have people unwilling to stand up and say what they believe in and move forward, whatever the consequences are to themselves. If they thought it was best for America, if they thought this was best for our future, then they should have stood their ground and did it. I felt it was not in the best interest, and I did my best to stop it. And because the American people were utterly opposed, it was stopped cold. So today we have a Congress that does not think it's in our best interest. A Congress in the United States refuses to move forward on amnesty. We have the American people totally opposed to amnesty. When I say total, overwhelming numbers. Obviously, there's millions of Americans who disagree with it. And just to give you an insight, we have a candidate in New Hampshire who has literally jumped over from Massachusetts. He was the president, was the Senate there for 2 years, Brown. Jumped over to run for Senate in New Hampshire, right? And he's running against a lady who was a most popular governor, whose father was very involved in politics, so the name is big New Hampshire name, Shaheen, and who's running 12 points ahead of him, and for good reason. As she said, who is this guy? He just came over last week, you know? He doesn't even have any roots here. We want somebody to represent New Hampshire, and she's the incumbent. She's a senator now, okay? I didn't think it was a prayer chance. Well, when all those unaccompanied youth came running across the border this summer, 60,000, that became a huge issue again. He starts talking about immigration. He's pounding the immigration issue in 30 days, top. All the press said it can't be anything else. Nothing else has happened up here. He is now 1 point up in a race that he should be nowhere in, because people of New Hampshire know that this is a bad policy. She's on the wrong side of it, and it's strong enough out there to actually turn around a race such as that. So it's clear that the American people are opposed. And we have a democracy. I mean, we have democratic governments, but it's a great put it's a republic, but we have a democratic government. We have rules of law in this country. And we have to, and it's what keeps us from total chaos, is that all the rules apply to all of us. So no matter what your background is, all the rules apply. It doesn't matter if you're rich, it doesn't apply. If you're poor, another rule applies. It should all apply to everyone. So it's fairness principle, which is basically one of the key points of our Constitution as it was formed, that it was made certain it applied to everyone equally. And so now we've had these 20-some years of absolute disregard from the rule of law. And we now have a President of the United States, who just a few years ago was pushed to grant amnesty through executive order. And he came out and said it would be illegal. You cannot do that. The Congress Congress has said no to it, you can't, as president, just say, forget the Congress, forget the will of the people, I'll do what I want. And yet that is what he says now he's going to do. Total violation of the Constitution, a complete abandonment of the rule of law by a president of the United States. That's what we're looking at today. Yes, to that, but to even consider bypassing the Congress of the United States, that's totalitarian. We are losing the very fabric of our country because we don't have people in Washington with the guts to do the right thing. Let me just say, it seems to me there's a lot of issues that are legitimate. You hear from agricultural industry that we can't get the workers. We can't get the workers. So clearly, as a country, we need the agriculture industry to have the workers. And they say the best thing to do is for us to have people who are here illegal. Well, no, that's not the best thing. The best thing is when this huge, powerful industry in this country is do it the way that you and I would have to do it if we don't like the law. And that is change the law. Just change the law. If it's not working, this is the way we do it. We go to Washington, we get a lot of lobbyists together, or whatever it is you got, and you make your case. And if they won't do it, you go to the American people, you run candidates against them, you let them know this is important, and we want it changed. Okay, that's how you're supposed to do it. That's our system. If you think that 1.2 million is not enough to be coming here legally, you think it should be 2 million, well, go to Congress and change it. If the Congress of the United States thinks it should be more, why don't they change it? Simple. You know why they won't change it? Because the American people don't want it, and they don't want their name associated to a bill that will be used against them in the election. That's where we are. And that's what's been happening all these years, is that they refuse to move forward on any kind of enforcement of our laws. So what's the solution? What's the solution as we look at this now? Number one, we got to get the border. Now, a lot of people say you can't do it. That is just words. Because I was down on that California border. I've been on the border many, many times. The California border was where an enormous number of people were coming over, right? My brother went down there, and we had a press conference, and he's running for president. And literally, there was some illegal aliens that came over while we were talking. They came over, and they said, hey, what's going on? Can we get a ride into town? I mean, it was hysterical. It was absolutely hysterical. This is how open this border is, completely wide open, all right? And so we went to the Border Patrol, and we said, what can you do? They say you can't do it. And they described exactly what needed to be done. A dual fence, it's so that it wouldn't look bad. You don't want Texas, right next to San Diego. So it's depressed. You depress the land some, you do dual fence. And then you put sensors in the middle. So when somebody comes across the first fence, it triggers a sensor. You have Jeeps on the inside. They make it right down, okay? Under Clinton, they built the fence. They did it. And you know what? Problem of illegal immigration in San Diego dropped dramatically. The values of homes on both sides of the border went straight up. Trade increased because you don't have all these people transitting across your property or through your industries or whatever it is. And property value went up. All is good. The target was Arizona. And then enormous problems in Arizona. Ranchers, terrible, terrible position. As these vast ranches, animals, and just people coming across, killing the animals, and just increasing the fear factor of people living there. It was amazing. And I've been on that border many, many times, and I've sat and talked with these ranchers. And I've listened to what happened to them. And so over the last couple of years, they haven't secured that border, I'm the first to say. But they put so much attention to it, and they have some kind, it's not a fence that would stop people, but it stops cars from going across. It's like this wide. They'll put poles up so you can't drive drugs across. It's not what you would want, but there's been enough attention that now it's Texas, and they're pouring across Texas. Enormous. So our border is wide open. That has to be stopped. We have to secure our borders. Secondly, we've got to take charge of this visa problem. People overstaying their visa. It seems to me that NSA can actually track every one of your phone calls and record them, and everybody else around the country without any trouble. Then we should be able to figure out a little system that allows people who are here legally with a visa license, have everything they need, but on a certain day, when that visa's up, if you haven't been able to renew it, everything stops. Your license is no longer valid. We know where you are. Hopefully, there's some indication. And if you're picked up for a speeding ticket because you're now here illegally, you sent home because you don't have a visa. And you came on a visa and you made a deal with us that this is how long the visa is. And you let people know you've got to take action here. You can't just stay here because you want to. You've got millions and millions of people who want to come to this country. And they're trying to do it legally. We wish to encourage that. What do you do next? Law enforcement has to be work site. We have to start enforcing the law. And those individuals who are out there hiring illegals at the expense of American workers have to be told they lose their daggone license if they keep this stuff up. You know, maybe the first time you give them a warning, and the second time you pull the license for 6 months. And let's see how many people are going to hire people illegally. And we don't say that you have to do any investigative work. There's a system in place, E-Verify. It's so simple. And if you use E-Verify, so anybody who wants to work for you, they give you the documentation, you put it in, if it comes up fine, then you hire them. You don't have to investigate to see if it's fraudulent documents, none of that. And if that happens, no penalty for you, no matter who you have working for you, as long as you don't deliberately figure out a system where you can bypass it. You have to ask yourself, why do corporations so interested in having a continual flow of people here illegally? It's because they exploit them. It's because they exploit them. They are paying them less. They don't have to worry about any kind of lawsuit in case their working conditions aren't appropriate. They are exploited across this country. All right? And you'll get story after story after story of the federal government going in and raiding a meat packing plant in Iowa or the chicken plant in Georgia. And the next day, they're all like, oh my gosh, that was 70% of our employees. What are we going to do? And they put word out, and the people are lined up to work here. Lined up. All right, now in Georgia, they said, well, they don't have transportation. And so they worked it out. But they went into those major cities. They have buses that go out. They have lodging for them for 5 days, and then they take them back. And these people, Americans, are having these jobs now for those that have heard at the time. All right, so what else do you do? Then you have a situation where you now sent word out that you don't come here and think you can just live here and work here. It's not going to work anymore. You have to come legally. So that discourages more and more people from coming across the border, hoping to be able to be situated. And it does also encourage many people here to say the situation is no longer what it used to be. And maybe it's time for me to see if I can make it at home. All right, but there is going to be people here still illegally. But that cannot even be addressed. No amnesty can be even talked about until those other factors are in place. And what is so absolutely reckless about the President of the United States even mentioning amnesty as if he's going to give it through executive order is because what is his plan afterwards? What do you think if he gives 12 million individuals living here illegally amnesty? What do you think is going to happen next month? Do you not believe that we're going to have millions of more individuals pouring into this country saying, my gosh, if they give them amnesty, maybe I can get it next time. I'll go later for the next. We will have a flood, another flood, and this time it may not stop at 15. Maybe it'll be 20 and 30. And so my question to those who take this position, I could understand this position. Now, I would never suggest the President of the United States violate the Constitution and the rule of law. But I can understand you saying, okay, guys, we can do those things, but then we have to be compassionate to those that are here. You know, and we can take a look at that. I may disagree with you, but it's certainly a strong case to be made. But no case can be made until this country gets its house in order, with a secure border so we know who's coming, and the visas that are under control, and enforcement being applied, and those people here being sent home who are picked up with whatever minor violation of law are sent home. It sends a very powerful message that we want everyone to come to this country legally. Legally. we welcome those who do. I want to close on just a point and open up to questions. I talked a little bit about debate. I'm going to tell you how important this debate is. Those in Washington I just referred to, they're not leaders. They are not leaders. Too many of them. There's something called a party lines up, all right? And that means if you're a Republican, the word goes out, vote yes on Bill A. And if you're a Democrat, vote no on Bill A. And you are expected to exactly that. And those are the most important votes. The rest of them, they let you take care of yourself, right? These are the important ones. And I'm telling you, and I don't care if you're conservative or you're liberal, it doesn't matter to me. There's something wrong with a policy like that. There's something really wrong. Because when you run and you tell people and ask for their vote, you're telling them, this is what I believe, this is where I think the country should be moved to, this is what I think's wrong, and this is what I think's right, and I want to go fight for this. And then you get back there, and you get a phone call from a leader in your party, or even the President of the United States telling you, oh, I need your vote on this. I need your vote on this. It's happened. We have an entitlement program in this country that was given to us by a conservative president and votes from a conservative Congress. If the conservatives in the Congress of the United States had told George Bush no to his plan for Medicare expansion, we would not have passed. So I asked them, what in the world are you thinking? Entitlement, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is that probably as much of an anathema to Republicans as anything you can imagine, and most particularly to conservatives. I knew entitlement was a bad thing when I was this big. I couldn't spell the word, but I heard my brothers and fathers arguing constantly about this terrible entitlement program. So how did it pass? I asked my conservative Congress friends. The president called me. But I care who called you? This is a program that you feel very strongly is terrible. The future of the country, it would be harmed. Your own children. You voted for it because somebody called you on the phone? Are you joking me? That's not leaders. And why did he do that? Because he felt he couldn't say no to the president. Well, then you're not a leader. That's not what we need. How are you guys going to assure yourself that when you're put in a position, and as I said, you don't have to be elected. You could be standing in a school line waiting to pick up your 7-year-old and be told, this is what they're going to teach next year to the 8-year-old. And you're going to be one of those, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I hate that. I hate that idea of having that taught to my kids. Well, you know what? You're not doing your responsibility as a parent. If you don't think that's what should be taught, you've got to fight for them. And you should say, they're not going to teach. When's the next school board meeting? Are you coming with me? And maybe we'll just run for school board next election, and we'll take over this school board, because we're not taking this stuff anymore. They got to counsel with parents and find out. You can't just tell us. These are our kids. You've got to learn to fight. You've got to go right up to the thing. I've been called racist so many times, I answer to it. I could care less. And I just could care less. Why do I care? Nobody's going to intimidate me, and that's where you need to get. You need to find out what it is you believe, what's important to you, and then stand up to it and be bold. That's the American principle. That's one of the greatest gifts we've been given in this country, is the right to speak our minds. And know, if you've studied your heart, you know that this is what you believe in. There's no meanness coming from it. This is a legitimate position, and I'm taking it, and I'm taking it to my workplace, and I'm going to let people know what I believe, and then we have a vibrant debate in this country, and America's a better place because of it. That's what we need in this country, left and right. We need true leaders. Forget the political correctness. Forget all this stuff. Oh, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say that. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. I'm going to tell you every single time. And I don't care if you tell me you're offended or not. Why do I care if you're offended? You could be offended just because you looked at me and you didn't like my looks. So let's get real grown up and recognize the country needs vibrant debate. If we had had vibrant debate on amnesty 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, and recognized it wasn't working, then maybe somebody would have done something. But instead, everybody was quiet and said nothing because they were afraid of being called names like racist. So with that, I encourage every one of you to openly discuss with those with whom you disagree, and take your stand as tough as you can. Listen to what they have to say. Keep your mind open. And indeed, you might learn something. If nothing else, you'll definitely learn why they think what they think, and you'll be able to reflect indeed why you disagree with that, and why you are more firm about what you believe. And with that, let me open it up to questions. Thank you all very, very much.
Before you ask the question, please stand stand up and state your name and
Okay.
your major.
Alright, so my name is Juan De La Rosa, and I'm a political science major. And my question was, so I'm an undocumented immigrant, and I've grown up in the United States for 13 years. I've grown up on American principles, this principle of standing up for what I believe in, and I've pledged to the American flag for the last 13 years. I feel very American, and my question is, how do you define American? Do you consider me an American, even though I am undocumented?
Well, there's two ways to look at that. One is there's a legal issue. And if you look up legally, you're not in America, you know,
Yes,
because there's
but beyond
citizenship. And then the other one is clearly, are you, there is without question a sense of being committed to this country and to recognize our if you like, our heroes, our history, and our cultures, and respect those, and really want to be here for all the right reasons. And I'm sure since you're here 13 years, that's true. Aren't you a dreamer, though? Don't you get the amnesty from the dreamer?
No, it's not amnesty. What it is, it's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and it's a temporary program. It's on a 2-year basis, and it's not legal status, but I do have a Social Security. I do contribute. I do pay taxes, and so.
And let me tell you something.
Yeah.
It will never change. You will end up with citizenship. It will not go backwards.
Okay.
That's politics, I'm just telling you. That's politics.
Right.
Whether one side thinks it should be reversed, it is not going to be reversed.
Right, I believe so too, because there's actually a poll from the Brookings Institute from this year showed that 61% of Americans back a pathway to citizenship for undocumented people, and 51% Republicans.
You know, you got to be careful about polls. If that were true, amnesty would pass. Why aren't? I mean, just logically, why is the Congress of the United States and the Senate hesitant to pass something that 61% of people agree to? It is not. If you use the word amnesty, you'll end up with enormously high numbers of votes. Enormously high. So that's where, and then if you ask the question, if the border's been secure and our laws are being enforced, should we give amnesty to the ones still here? And that's another question. And you'll see the numbers go up on that. But if you just ask point blank amnesty, I'm telling you, you lose hands down. And the reason I know is because when I fought against amnesty, I had that meeting I put together, and we had the top leaders of the anti-amnesty movement, if you like, and we were the ones that were called on television and radio to talk about it. And they said, what should be our strategy? And I said, call it amnesty. Don't let it call it comprehensive immigration. You call it amnesty every single time you get a chance, because I knew what the polls were. And that's why we did it. Follow up and then we'll do it.
Okay, I was just wondering what you saw were the problems of the comprehensive immigration reform bill that passed in the Senate in 2013, being that before there was any pathway to citizenship, like you said, the bill said that they would have to secure the border and there would have to be a third-party independent kind of body that would verify
yes.
that border is secure. And I was just wondering if you saw were the problems of that whole comprehensive.
I'll tell you what it comes down to, quite simply. Well, first of all, if you looked at the bill, the loopholes for that were this big, maybe a truck. Okay? Because the way they were written, you were not going to have to secure the border. I mean, it was like a committee of 4 who were going to, who the president picked. I mean, it was ridiculous. I don't remember the details, but I do know without question that there would be no sense that we would have that before the amnesty. And secondly, which would be bad, because then how many people are going to try to get across before we secured it, knowing that once that it's all worked out, that once it's secure, they'll get it if they're in the country. So that was troublesome. But I'll tell you what the real problem is. We don't trust them. We had that in 86. In 86, we said amnesty, and here's the law, now we enforce the law, and they wouldn't enforce the law. So what makes me think now we're going to say, okay, amnesty, if we have border secure and the laws enforced, well, I got a good idea. How about border secure, land and laws enforced, and then come back? And the Democrats won't do that because they don't feel they'll get it. That's the key. You have hit on the key issue. One side says, we need these things first because we don't trust you guys, okay? And the other side says, we need the amnesty because we want to make sure we get that. And if we just give you independently the other two, we don't trust you to give us amnesty. Therein lies the issue. I hope that helps.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, sir.
My name is Zachary Kemp. I'm a neuroscience and biochemistry major here at Tech. And being pre-med, I've seen, even in our ERs through shadowing in the ER, I've worked with illegal alien patients. And I've seen how sometimes they can, in a way, get preferential treatment to American patients because we don't want to be our nightmare. And I was just wondering kind of what your opinion is on how legal immigration is kind of, in a way, working against our healthcare system here in America.
That's a minor example, which you've had personal experience with. It was Southern California back when the immigrants were coming heavily across the California border. I remember the number was large, like 18, 20 hospitals in the southern part, or health clinics and hospitals were closed, shut down, because they are required to give health care to anybody that comes in that emergency. Really, the law is if it's an emergency situation. But no hospital is going to say, well, you're not in an emergency situation, and have them go home only to find out that something bad subsequently happened. They can't risk that. And so everybody's cared for in the hospitals. Well, it became a huge burden. I mean, a financial burden, and they couldn't stay open. They couldn't stay open. So all kinds of hospitals across the Arizona and California border were shut down. I had a good friend who was out there, and she was taking care of an elderly father who had a heart condition. And the hospital near them, they were in Tucson, the hospital was shut down. And so they had to go much further up. And what kind of impact does that have? She goes, I'm terrified. Every time he has any kind of pain, I'm driving hours, whereas before it was just down the street. So this, you have an enormous impact, extremely costly to the taxpayers, the additional expense of health care. Because of, anybody realizes you've got 12 million people here we're giving free health care to, free education to, you're going to have an impact on the budget. Yes, please. Yes.
Well, I'm Alex Mello right now. I've lived in Houston for about 6 years. How would I say it? I've been pretty Texanized, if that's how you want to call it. I'm what you call a third culture kid. My father was an engineer, we moved a lot. And what happens is, I've also lived in Spain. I know how their immigration treatment is, and I speak 3 languages, etc. But when it comes down to it is, I've seen how Houston works. You're familiar with the shell boom that has, uplifted the American economy, gotten us out of the recession. Right now, I'm a chemical engineer major because, of course, I want to go back to Houston. Now, the problem is, you're a treasurer. You're familiar with how economics works and everything, right?
Yes.
So when it comes down to it, is, if you have illegal immigrants, it'll be much cheaper, and therefore your average variable cost, which will be much lower. Now, the belief of the Republican Party is, if you have a larger profit because you have a lower, average total cost, what's happening is you have trickle-down economics.
Correct.
So by having those illegal immigrants actually being better for the corporations, for the small business owners, so they may reinvest into the economy with trickle-down economics. So
your point is a very valid one. It's a very valid one. I happen to be,
I'm moderate.
I'm a moderate. Against Reagan. But your point is an excellent one. This is what's wrong with, I believe, with Republicans, and my Republican friends will be beside themselves, and that is free trade. This idea comes right from what you're saying. It's not only free trade; it's cheaper labor. All is good, and free trade means you can go overseas and have real cheap labor and bring your goods into the country without tariff. Okay, it's all the same mix. The bottom line of corporations and businesses is all time important. But that means you're defining a country, a nation, as great as America, as one that is about consumers. That's what matters the most, is consumers, because we're going to get cheaper products because of all of this, right? Well, that's not what I see as America. I think we are a land of families and workers, and we should have policies that make certain everyone in America can get up, and if they've fallen down for whatever reason, that they have a place on that economic model. And so if you didn't, once you guys graduate and have these terrific degrees, you're going to come in the economic run up here, and there's lots of opportunities up there. There's not going to be so many opportunities down here. If you fall out, you got into drugs, you didn't finish high school, you Your life got mixed up and now you're 22 and you don't know what to do. You should have a place on that economic ladder in this country so you can get up. We don't want all those jobs overseas. We want them here in this country so that every American can make certain that they can live out that American dream of getting started wherever they find themselves, working hard and climb that economic ladder. And there's just too many and I've debated too many of these Harvard types that literally said, as soon as the camera went off, who would want those jobs anyhow? And I just thought, are you joking me? These people are taking care of their families with these jobs, and you're willingly allowing them to go overseas so we can have cheaper products. You want to quick follow?
Yeah, quick follow.
Because I got another
So
question.
my father is also a chemical engineer. He works for Dow, and the major tech centers, the low labor tech centers, are in Bangalore. So you would have a room, 400 people that would be doing the work of 400 Americans, theoretically, right? So when it comes down to it, is they're working 12 hours for about $400 a month. And if you think about it, there's no way to compete. There's no way to compete.
You know that.
So should we bring them over? Is that way? Because I feel like if we give them visas, we will give them higher salaries, and they'll be a lot more competitive with India again, and with China.
I'll tell you what the problem is. It's because we've been fed a bill of goods. You know, STEM workers. Everybody out there, the science, technology, you guys know, engineer, math. These workers, they say we need more visas for STEM workers because we don't have enough in America. I read the other day, I made this person send this to me, studies, not Heritage, Rand Corporation, huge, there's 4 corporations or 4 big groups that have studied it. We don't have a shortage of STEM workers in America. We have Americans across this country who are qualified to do those jobs. So why? Why do they want all these? Because if they can get them over this country in a visa, they can pay them $50,000, $45,000. And American workers, engineers, etc., are charging $8,000, or that's what they used to make, $9,000. I don't know what the numbers are. But I am telling you, they keep saying, oh, we need more STEM workers. No, just look at the studies. Just look on the left and the right. Any study you want, you're going to see this. And corporations will keep telling you, we need them, we need them. Well, go find them in Virginia Tech, graduating class. You know, I mean, go to Duke. Let's take care of some Americans. They're supposed to prove that there's no American who can do this job. They don't do that. That's where the government should come in and say, we want the evidence. And by the way, we're looking at what we're looking at, and we think we should cut STEM workers, not increase them. I promise. Over here. I think we need that. Let me go here, here, and then here. Is that good? Bob, go ahead.
My name is Danny Moulton, and I'm a senior in computer engineering. And I guess mine is more of an opinion embedded into a question. I think you made a very good argument, and I agree with part of it.
Sure.
But I think that it's kind of oversimplifying the issue, and it only tells one side of the story. I mean,
that's right. I'm not going to make your case.
I think
there's no question.
If you're trying to objectively look at a problem, you have to look at both sides and see
and
the
I have
roots of
exactly,
where things come from.
exactly.
I mean,
I think that's
immigration is not
legitimate.
an issue of just the past 30 years. I mean, and the thing is, the point I'm trying to make is the reason why we have such an influx of people from South America, the Caribbean, coming to the U.S. in a big part is because of a very, in my opinion, erroneous U.S. foreign policy with South America, with the Caribbean, in terms of,
Amen.
My country, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and the history of invasion.
No, the thing is, we're saying South America. Never single map in the world except in the U.S. Panama is North America.
Okay, let me let him finish.
South America.
Let me finish. Go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead. Okay, so give me just a quick idea of how the foreign policy is impacted.
I just feel that, the U.S. throughout, especially in the past century, they financed dictatorships. They provided guerrillas with guns. They provided guerrillas with money to do, coup d'etats to governments, democratic governments throughout Latin America. So in a way, it's like, you create a mess in your backyard, and then you create a fence to not look at it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
it's the U.S. responsibility, but it's definitely.
Let me ask you, overwhelming majority, not, although it's changing in the last couple of years, but the overwhelming majority are Mexican. They're coming from Mexico. Up to a couple of years ago, now there's more and more coming in.
No, that's an
So what about our policy with Mexico? What have we done? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an expert in Mexican history, you know, but if you even go back, you know, taking all the land that used to belong to Mexico and then push them down that border and then prevent them from coming up. It's kind of
Well, they're coming to
I can speak more about, you know, the
Sure. I can't, you know, I don't see how, there's what, a lot of this you're talking about has not happened in the last, what do you say, 20 years? I mean, there's support for the dictators, for the dictators who support the last 20 years.
That's the consequences
Of the earlier
they come on to
I would have to look at that, but there's no question that the dominant reason people are coming to the country, I think it's universally understood, that because they're looking for work. They're looking for a better way of life. That's the dominant reason why people come here. It is the work related. It's the magnets that they're bringing here. And then there's also the idea that there's education and health care for their children. So, what's foreign policy?
But they that those people had, say, Honduras or Guatemala, whatever you want to say. If they had education, they had health care, they had good democratic elected governments in their country, they wouldn't want to go through all the hardship that means, you know, going through the border.
Yeah, you know,
because I heard you proposing, you know, some solutions as to what the problem, some solutions to the problem, potential solutions. But I didn't hear you mention, not even once, the idea of working with Latin American governments to better the conditions of life.
You know, you can only do so much. You can only do so much. Because you have people in Latin America who are now in charge of the government, as well as South America, who hate the United States of America. And so then we're going to go and say, well, we're going to help you. I mean, you know, maybe there is enormous corruption. Look at that's going on in Mexico. But the bottom line is this. You're talking, what, 1-2 billion people in this world who live under oppression? And whether it be because of some foreign policy in America or not, they don't have a right to come here to this country and make a life. Responsible for their people. And if there is crisis in those countries where they could use American aid, especially if there's any kind of natural disaster, America's the first one there with billions of dollars to help out. And we certainly have sent consultants around the world, advisors to try to help build the economy. But capitalism is the answer to the problem. Okay, you had a question. Okay, sure. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering how the U.S. can destabilize an entire region and cause corruption and violence and then wash its hands clean of people fleeing that corruption.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You tell me what it is that America has done that has caused enormous corruption
Just look at
in other
Central and
parts.
South America.
2009 Honduras coup.
Okay, just the beginning.
The conditions. You can't just throw out a line like that and have everybody say, oh, that's what have we done to cause corruption?
Have you ever read, there's a textbook by Galliano about working with the people whose foreign policy, like, you're affecting, right? It's an entire book, and I really highly recommend that you read it, because it's all about how the U.S.
There's also that each country has to take charge of its own difficulties and problems. And if another neighboring country can help, then they should go to that neighboring country and have a dialogue. There's no question we're working very closely now with Mexico, because they for years allowed the cartels to take charge and ended up taking enormous power in that country. They still have it, but we are working with them, but only to the extent that the Mexican government welcomes us. We cannot just show up, although I think sometimes we move the Marines in first 50 miles over there, clean the place up so that we don't have problems on our border, would not be unadvisable. But then there would be issues of violating the rights of Mexico, so I wouldn't support that. Let's go. And then you sir, go right ahead.
I actually have a question that's not debatable, but I want everybody to think about it, really think
And
about
that's a statement. Okay, go right ahead. Okay, you're
what is your purpose of naming these group of people aliens? Is it to dehumanize them? Is it to make them different from everybody here? Do they not have Do they not have an education?
Yeah, you know, if you look...
What is the difference? Why call them aliens?
It's
when they're
legal
humans. When they're humans. Oh, why
you want to change the legal terms?
Why call them? Why you call them?
I believe that in order to make your case, you use the words that you believe are accurate but very powerful. And I believe that when it's suggested by those who disagree with me that I should somehow change the vocabulary which I'm using, which would soften my tone, that I lose the impact of the point. There are immigrants in this country. Some are here legally, and some are here illegally. So I make it very clear that the ones I'm referring to are not the ones that have come here legally or have finally gotten legal paperwork done, but that there is another group, and those are the ones that are here illegally. And this is what I'm here to talk about. Not some mushy language that would suggest that, oh my gosh, it's all so difficult, we can't figure it all out. No, I'm very clear. These are the people that are causing enormous problems in this country. And we've welcomed them here, unfortunately, by our lack of enforcement and our willingness to offer one magnet after another. It's our fault. There's many good people here illegally. I'm well aware of that. But it's our policies, it's our country, and we've got to take care of American workers, and we've got to assimilate those who are already here, and we've got to secure our border from those that are coming here, many of whom do not have good intentions for the people in this country. So that is our job as a government, and we have failed.
I just have a question. You said that many of the undocumented migrants coming to the U.S. are looking for work, but actually, especially from Honduras, the most dangerous country in the world outside of the war zone, they are escaping extreme gang violence and poverty created because of this drug traffic. 90% of the cocaine entering the United States goes through Honduras. Do we not have a moral obligation to help these people who are being killed in their own homes every single day?
Your point is an excellent one. Over our history, when there has been, usually it's some kind of a war or some kind of violent activity or even a natural disaster, we have opened our doors for asylum seekers. And certainly in Nicaragua, for instance, during the revolution, lots of revolutions have caused us to open our doors to bring people here. And we have a certain, there's a term for them that naturally are. They're here, and they're usually for 1 year, 2 years, but no one's ever been sent back. So they're here, and it's never been a problem. So if indeed a case can be made, and I think there is, what you're saying, although it has to be presented properly, you can't just say anybody who's suffering oppression in their country, because we don't have room for the business. Okay? You know, there was a poll done in Mexico. It was a few years back. Who would go to America if they had the opportunity? 45%. 45% of Mexico. Okay? Now, we can't afford it. We can't do it. We can't do it as a country. We will lose the very fabric of our nation trying to accept. And that's just Mexico. So you have to present your case as one that deserves asylum, that there is true repression that would cause a certain group of those people to suffer like this, and then we would bring them in. We've done it from people around the world. So yes, that is a very legitimate way, and we should not change our asylum. I agree. Yes.
My name is Harrison. I'm a mechanical engineering major. I'm actually a member of YAF. And so my question isn't necessarily for Bay, but actually for people running off the oppression platform. I think what the general consensus that Bay made is that the problem is stemming from the illegality of immigration, not from immigration, period. So my question would be, how can you how can you verify that it's okay for someone to come to this country illegally, work illegally, then get legal health care because it's offered, but it's free, and then also then inherently take away jobs from legal Americans, but then still say it's okay even though it inherently breaks the law of the United States? So what would you mean?
Other than the status, what makes them legal?
But that's,
If
and
their
that's
job-
not fine.
Is their work illegal? Do they not work honestly?
They're not here.
They're not here.
We have a lot of people that might want to answer that question. If you want to answer
I was just going to say, being here in the United States without documentation is not a crime.
is it illegal? Is it a crime to be working illegally?
That is a different story, and then we need to talk about to the employers who are trying to make a major profit off exploiting those people, and I agree with you on that point. But I think the rhetoric is so important, and part of that is the words that we use. Part of it is saying America when America stretches from the tip of South America to the tip of Canada. But the fact that we say illegal, first of all, people are not illegal, behavior is illegal. And I'm not an expert, but it's my understanding of the studies that I've done, is that it is not a crime to be undocumented. If you go back and then you come back in, when you know that, because many people who come here do not even realize what the process is, and it's a 71-year wait from Mexico if you were to today apply for whatever you're calling legal status.
That's a legitimate point. It's not 71 years if you have relatives here. Because you get moved into the front of the line. That's family and friend, you get moved in the front. But okay, let's assume you're right. Let's say it's 71 years, okay? Let's just assume, and most of us would think 71 years is ridiculous, because, why would he even apply, okay? Then why don't we do it the right way? Why don't we go to the Congress of the United States and say, look, why don't you tell the government that we have the president and the administration and say, something's got to be changed here. What are you guys doing up there? We do have an enormous overload.
Boehner won't even talk about
it. This is the law today. Who is doing this? Who is processing these people? Who would have 1.2 million a year, a whole lot, and then there's all kinds of visas and things. Okay, well, if they're that far backlogged for processing, and we should talk to the government of the United States. Those are
yeah, I agree.
And I think that should be corrected. But it doesn't mean that we then say to all the people, well, just come anyhow. You can't say that to American people. You don't like this law? Well, just break it. I don't like paying taxes. I bet you all of you would agree with me. Let's forget taxes for this shit, I can be our guy straight. You can't do it. It's a rule of law. It's key to keeping this country functioning in a manner that is good for everybody. All right, I think I better take two more, and we'll go here, and then we'll go here. Very good.
So I do agree that we should keep more illegal immigrant who are undocumented out of the country. But what should we do outside? You think? What do you think we should do outside? How should we cooperate with these South American and Central American government to prevent that, so that people will actually want to stay?
This is a very, very insightful question. NAFTA. Remember NAFTA is this big bill that went through, trade bill, and we were told that NAFTA, if we allowed our corporations to build their factories in Mexico or Canada, whatever, they could bring their products in here free. So an enormous number of automobile industries moved there thinking they could, it would be less, labor would be so much less expensive to bring it here. And literally, I was opposed to this. I was absolutely opposed to this, I'll be honest, to this free trade agreement. And one of the arguments was it will end illegal immigration because it's going to build the economy of Mexico, create all these jobs there, and one fellow, tongue-in-cheek, I'm sure, said, Americans are going to be coming to Mexico, Okay. Well, it was a disaster. Okay, it's a disaster. Why? The key is we need industry in Mexico to create jobs. And we cannot, and they've nationalized their oil. They're one of the richest oil countries in the world. And for so many years, oil was so valuable a product. And they nationalized it, and they're not able to produce what they should produce, okay? Well, what can we do? They've nationalized it, so the government has it now. well, if they called and says, can you guys send some people over here to help us build this, get it working, and then we would do that, but we can't just show up. Okay, so one of the reasons there's so many illegals came from Mexico is without, they dried up the daggone farms in the southern part of the country because we made all these farm products, everybody could do it, you know, we can move goods back and forth, and they lost jobs. And so they had to go to the cities, and there's all this about jobs in the cities, and the government literally said, you gotta go north, guys. We don't have jobs here. This is going to create all kinds of crime and problems. We have young men here with no jobs. So what can we do? We are limited on what we can do. If people say, look, we've done trade agreements, Caribbean, we've got free trade agreements, it's just about everybody. Okay? So that was the idea was they could create industry, and this would be helpful for them. They could trade it and import it to us, and we would buy the goods. It failed. It's failed. You have to rely on the government and the leaders in a country to provide an environment in which small businesses can thrive. And small businesses is where the jobs are. That's how you build them. That's how you create jobs in the United States and everywhere else. So if that environment's not there, you're not going to have jobs. There's nothing I can do for you. But if you say, can you help us build industries? I tell you, there's business and people all around that would be willing to do that. But you got to have an environment which is taxes are low and it's not burdensome and the government can't, it's not like they nationalize your industry tomorrow. Environment in which would encourage you. And that's all, I mean, that's hot in so many countries around the world. I promised one last question. Yes, sir.
So, my name is Ricardo. I'm the president of LASO, which is the umbrella organization for Latino organizations here on campus. Basically, I move all these people here because of one main thing. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for having a voice. We really appreciate having the option to have a discussion. But I feel that besides having our voice heard here on campus, besides all the opinions, I'm not gonna say my opinion on this topic. What I do want to say is, I don't know if you're familiar with the flyer that's been running around. First flyer that they have, but they have the alien invasion.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I saw it just now.
So they have alien invasion, and they have a family running that says caution, right? The Virginia Tech has something that is called principles of community, and you don't have the right to talk over people. You don't have the right to diminish people. You don't have the right to call them alien invasion in a green paper all over McBride or all over Search. We do have rights.
No. Okay, you have to ask me a question, and I will respond.
Yeah, I'll answer the questions.
Okay, and I appreciate very much. I'm sure that you're a major player in getting this political audience, and I appreciate that because this is what I like. It's both sides. I like to hear the other side, and I know that there's legitimate points on both sides. But you have to understand also. Number one, you want. Oh, you have a question? I thought that was the question.
No, it's not a question. So first of all, I want to have. For giving you a question, I want to ask everyone, because I felt that if we didn't have such an offensive flyer, I wouldn't have come, because I felt offended.
Exactly.
And no one here came offended. But you don't have, I don't think you don't have the right to advertise.
Is there a question for me?
Yeah, you have to ask me a question.
All right.
That's how that's done.
This is, I feel that everyone here at LASO and all the people that came here, they feel offended. I don't think this is a right way to move people, to make them offended to come here. This is the first time since I immigrated here to Virginia Tech legally, to the U.S. legally, and I have worked all my way into my engineering career. I'm a mechanical engineer junior, that I feel offended by something. And it's in a school.
Is there a question from
Okay, I will answer that.
So how do you feel with that? Such a fire. How do you feel that the principles of community and Virginia Tech are being over?
I understand your question entirely, and it's a good one. It's a valid point because I'm sure.
Gentleman here who's talking over everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
We didn't hear the question because the gentleman.
Oh, okay. The question was about this flyer, you feel, and that many people have found this flyer offensive. They're offended by it. And what do I say? Okay. The first of all is the word offended is an active verb. Okay? That means that you choose to be offended. You choose to be offended. So, and now this is very important. This is very important because I have a right, as a Lauren, to express ourselves with the words we choose. And what her purpose of today, of sending this flyer out, was to get your attention. Is to get your attention, to get you here so we can have this open dialogue. You can hear our position, I can hear yours through many questions, and we get a sense that we disagree, but we can do so respectfully. Now, you think that the word alien invasion, we've had millions upon millions of people coming across our southern border. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to refer to the enormous flood as an invasion.
From other planets. We're all humans.
Let's look up the definition of alien.
The definition of alien is someone coming from a different country or someone else.
We're all aliens then. We all came from different countries. So legally, we came legally. You know you did. You Native American?
That's a completely different person, so the rest of your family is illegal. These are legal words that are used for you, okay? And they have specific meaning. And they're legitimate, okay? We can use them. You may not like them, but we can use them if we choose, because it's the way we're expressing ourselves. This is the right we gain as the First Amendment, okay? And you cannot like it, it's fine.